Should I go? Okay. Hi, I'm Trini Somasundram. I go to Peak to Peak Charter School too. I think this is a great opportunity to give back to the community and also volunteer and help out kids.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ari Mondro. I go to Monarch High School. I would like to be on the youth council because I think it's important to support and be a part of the community.
Great.
Hi, my name is Michael Liao. I also go to Peak Charter School. I just want to join the council because I think it's really cool to start doing stuff that benefits others and not just yourself while hanging out with some really fun people.
Great. We appreciate all of you applying to be a part of the Youth Leadership Council. We've got a very active council. I've been involved, as well as a number of the trustees have, over the last couple of years with all that they're doing, and it seems like every year they're doing more and more. So, and it really, the continued success really depends on people like yourselves stepping up to be a part of it. So we'll now allow the board members to ask any questions that might have of you.
I'll start. Ari, welcome. So I saw in your application you talked about increased bike paths, which is something that I often advocate for. Do you have an example of where you think we could use more bike paths here in town?
Well, all I know is that there are not that many, especially there aren't many dirt paths. There are plenty of sidewalks, but most of them are by busy roads, and it's tough to ride next to busy roads, especially with people walking on the sidewalks. So it would be nice to have bike paths anywhere where we get a lot of people walking on the sidewalks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for volunteering your time and throwing your names in for consideration. I'd just like to hear from all four of you as to what you'd like to see to make this town a better place. What do you think is lacking here in Superior, and what would you want to see actually built here in Superior, or brought to Superior, or changed about Superior that would make Superior a better place?
I had like an idea, like in the events, like movie night. We didn't have like a canned like food share event kind of thing. So like when we have movie night, we should just bring like just tell a family to bring like canned food so we could donate to the food share community. So we could also help like the lower income people. I thought that I didn't see a lot of like youth volunteers here, so I thought we could like maybe find a way to make more people volunteer around this community using maybe like social media and stuff.
I'd like for it to be possible for a way for youth not on the committee to be able to voice their opinions to the committee. I didn't even know it existed until a couple months ago.
So I didn't have too many specific ideas of what I wanted to see in Superior, but I did know that, like, in general, that some communities are really more connected, I guess is the word, compared to some other neighborhoods. And I was wondering what kind of ways we could make that more safe. Like, there are some neighborhoods where kids like to run around and play on the roads, and if there's any way that we could make sure that nothing dangerous could happen around that area is good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just more of comments than anything. First, this is the most popular committee that we have in town. It's amazing that we have so many students that want to be a part of this committee, and I think that's great. What I think is even better is that many of the students that come through to apply for this, I knew them when they were young. Ari, I remember you guys walking to school, and it's nice to see you guys being a part of this community. And I just hope that one day I can get my boys on this committee. It's such a good committee. The comment or the suggestion I would have, I'm the liaison, the board liaison for the committee, and I've seen new committee members come in and just sit back and listen and wait. And that's very respectful, but I would discourage you from doing that. What I encourage you to do is that if you've got a question or you've got an idea or comment, that there's probably half the other students at the table have the same idea, same comment, but they're just too afraid to ask it or mention it. Be involved right from the beginning, because it'll pay off. really good group. We just graduated several students, so it's a new group. The last meeting we had last week, Kevin Colon had a really good presentation discussion on values of the committee, philosophies of the committee, and it was really helpful. So I think you guys are all going to fit in very well, but be active right from the beginning. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, anything further from the board? All right, well, thank you again for coming down this evening for a quick discussion with us. We'll be acting on your appointments to the committee later on, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we'll adjourn the work session and be back at 7 o'clock. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Monday, September 11th, 2017. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Phyllis, can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington, Trustees Rita Dozell, Sandy Haverly, Chris Hansen,
Here.
Mark Lasis,
Here.
Kevin Ryan,
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Sargent here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do you have any items that the board would like to pull or change on the agenda?
I'd like to pull H from the consent agenda.
Okay. Any other changes? Do you have a motion to approve the agenda with 11H pulled?
I'll move to approve the agenda with H pulled.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. All right. Next is reports, questions, and issues.
I'll go. Last Wednesday, I attended the Superior Youth Leadership Council meeting, and as mentioned during the work session, that their primary focus was just reviewing their goals and their philosophies as a group. Kevin led a really good discussion where he got input from them on what their philosophies were of the group. So just a really well-run meeting and good, energetic group. So looking forward to getting some additional members on there and part of that group. This morning I attended the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council meeting. Several things that we reviewed. I'll be real quick on these though. The executive director reiterated that there still could be congressional budget cuts that could impact how DOE operates the Rocky Flats. So he did reiterate though that we carry or we have a significant reserve that could cover us for a year to continue the operations as they are, but just need to be aware that that could come down the pike. We had a quarterly review that DOE does, just give us an update on the monitoring that they're doing out there on the ponds and the Woman Creek and Walnut Creek. Nothing significant came up. Everything seems to be working properly. But we did see a little presentation on an explanation why the plutonium levels remained elevated for almost a year on Woman Creek. And essentially what it was is they calculate that on a rolling average. So the last calculation they had an exceedance, but then there was no water flow for the next several months. So there was nothing to average that out, so the exceedance remained high. Once the water flow started up again, and then it came back down, so there's, again, no issues out there to be concerned about. We did have a presentation on the CERCLA 5-year review, and I'm going to read a couple of things that came up that there were some concerns by some of the communities. I know Trustee Pennington had a couple of concerns that were addressed. But essentially, the EPA concurred that DOE's assessment that the remedy remains protective of human health and the environment. There's a review of the toxicity factors, also confirmed that the refuge and off-site lands remain suitable for unlimited use and unrestricted exposure. Essentially, the controls that they have in place, the systems that they have in place are working, they're effective. There are some concerns that were brought up, such as soil disturbances due to constructions on roads and trails and structures. But all that construction, all that will happen outside of the central operable unit, which the CERCLA 5-year review doesn't cover. It just covers the remedy for the central operable unit, and that is off-site. I mean, nobody can enter that. There would never be anything built out there. There's a fence around there to keep people out. So essentially they're saying that everything is good out there. There's still the question by several Stewardship Council members about the soils that are outside of the central operable unit and whether it is safe. And I think that's going to be an ongoing discussion and debate until things are done out there. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Kevin?
Thank you. I do have a few announcements, but I'm going to save them for a couple weeks, with the exception of one today, September 11th, of course, a very somber day. I think we all spend a lot of time thinking about friends and family and where we may have been 16 years ago. I think it's a great opportunity to also think about our first responders, particularly Rocky Mountain Fire District and the Sheriff's Department, and how fortunate we are to have them in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I just have one announcement. So next Monday, September 18th, there'll be a Traffic and Safety Committee meeting here at Town Hall at 6 p.m. On the agenda for that meeting will be a proposal to address cut-through traffic on Coal Creek Drive in Original Town. So if you'd like to weigh in, please plan on attending that meeting. And that's all I have.
Thanks. On August 30th, I attended a construction tour at downtown Superior along with Trustee Rita Dozell, Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington, and I think that was it. And Town Manager Matt Magley and a couple other town staff members were there. We all were very encouraged by the progress of the development to date, the sales as well. Everything that they've got under construction has been sold, and they're just making great progress. And the product type is really different than anything that exists in the area, and so I'm very encouraged by what they're building as well. I think it's been very well received in the market. On the 7th last week, on the 7th of September last week, I attended 3 different meetings: Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting here in the morning at Superior Town Hall, then a Metro Mayors Executive Committee meeting in Denver, and then the afternoon I attended the Colorado Municipal League's annual Mayors Summit, which also continued into the next day on the 8th. And then on the 9th, went to Chili Fest, and that was the 17th annual Chili Fest, the 4th year that we've had the Beer Fest, part of the Chili Fest, and just really want to extend a congratulations and thank you to town staff and the Superior Chamber of Commerce and all of the businesses that are a part of the Superior Chamber as well. It was just once again, just a great team effort. And of course the Boulder Valley Rotary Club for all of their involvement in the Beer Fest. And I talked to numerous people there during the event that were residents and people that were former residents and people who would love to be residents, and just everybody was very happy about the event, and a lot of them said they come back year after year. A lot of people from out of the area, they've just put it on their agenda to come back year after year, and so just it's our biggest event of the year, and always a great job by everybody. So just wanted to say thanks to all those involved. Upcoming events, I've got a book discussion, part of the library's On the Same Page program. Tomorrow night, Sports Stable, 7 p.m., community room at the Sports Stable. I'll be hosting the book discussion, and the book title that you'll need to read before tomorrow night is Sing for Your Life, and that's the book discussion for tomorrow. So I hosted that discussion last year, and it was a lot of fun. I've never done one of those before, but look forward to that tomorrow night. So that is it. Anyone else have any other announcements or anything? Okay. Matt. Okay. Kendra?
Nothing for me either.
Okay.
Thanks.
Phyllis. All right. Thank you. All right. Now we'll move on to public comment. Anyone in the public wish to make any comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. Tonight we have two presentations. We have a call and ride presentation and a Chamber of Commerce presentation. So we'll do the call and ride first.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Alex was able to schedule a presentation from RTD staff on the call and ride program and ours specifically, so they were able to attend tonight. So thank you for that, Alex.
Alex Arenello, Public Works Director. I'd like to introduce Brian Matthews from RTD, who's been our liaison in getting the call and ride up and operating. It's about a year ago, and so he's given us a one-year update on how things are going.
Thank you, Alex. As Alex said, my name is Brian Matthews. I'm a manager at RTD, and I handle all the unusual things at RTD, and there are a lot of unusual things. Call and ride falls into one of that categories. And Alex had asked me to come and give you a one-year review. It was August 1st of last year that the call and ride started. It is a grant-funded call and ride that the town applied for and received a grant through Dr. Cog, and they're paying for the service. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's happening on the call and ride and just a little review on how it works, because a lot of people with Uber and Lyft seem to get it confused. Right now, the call and ride is what I consider doing very well. We're doing 3.5 to 4 boardings per hour. So we take all the boardings for the day, basically divide it by the 13.5 revenue hours that we serve, and it comes out to 3.5, 3.7. That's good. We're very happy with that. We like to keep it above 3. Ideally, I'd love to see them at 4 per hour, but right now we're doing well for 1 year in. Who are we carrying on the call and ride? We're carrying a variety of people. I talked to both the drivers yesterday and today just to get a feel. I actually have been out here and I've ridden with one of the drivers today just to get that feel, because I'm not out here all the time. And they said they have about 5 or 6 seniors that use it on a regular basis, and they get their hairdresser, they go shopping, doctor's appointments, and Avista Medical Center. We have a couple kids who go over to Monarch High School on a regular basis every day. And then we have some commuters that are using it to the park and ride in the morning and from in the evening. In fact, when I was riding it this afternoon, we picked up a couple at the park and ride and we took them home. And they're catching the FF, or the Flatiron Flyer. We also have, there's a school here called the Rock Creek After School Program, who we had talked to before the call and ride opened up, and they're using it quite a bit. And that's good, because what we're trying to do is carry passengers. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about how this works, because that just seems to be, it's a very hard thing to communicate, because I think the name's a little misleading, and we're looking at possibly changing the name somewhere in the next couple of years. Call and ride implies you call, you get a ride. Yes, you can call, and you can get a ride. It's a 2-hour minimum wait, but it's on a first come, first serve, space available if it's there, if the ride's available. Uber and Lyft, your neighbors next door, and they drive for Uber. You can call and get it. That's not what we're about. We're about grouping riders. I want to give you 2 examples, and then I'll just close at that because I could stand here for an hour and chat with you. Let me just give you 2 different examples that we have every day. We have a customer who calls, today is Monday, customer who calls on Wednesday, and they want to go from their house to the doctor's office. One of the first questions we ask is we looking at a pickup time or a drop-off time? Okay, for a doctor's office, you want a drop-off time. So my appointment's at 3, let's drop off at 2:45. The customer can book online, but they're calling the driver this time. So the driver puts it in for a 2:45 drop-off. A couple things can happen. One, the driver's doing nothing, and it books the appointment. It's easy. Done. Thank you. Confirmed. All right, we're good. But what if we're at the other side of town and we're picking somebody else up at 2:45? We physically can't get over and get you. The driver, what happens, our scheduling software will offer an alternative, an hour before and an hour after. Maybe we can get you at 2:15. Maybe we can get you at 2:30. Obviously, if we say 3:15, that's not going to work. So the customer has that option on those alternatives. That's a drop-off. We also do pickup times, and the same process works again. So what we're trying to do is group rides. Remember, if I'm picking you up at 2:45, now that you're booked at 2:45, if Alex calls, I'm going to pick on you, Alex, because you're right there, and Alex wants a ride at 2:45 and he lives close to you, we may say, Alex, we can get you at 2:40. So we're grouping the rides. That's why we're carrying 3.5 boardings per hour. Those aren't individual rides from point A to point B. Those are carrying multiple groups of people. Sometimes it is a single trip with one person on the bus, but more than likely it's more than one person. It's 2 people, or it's 3, or it's a group of kids from the Rock Creek, because we're doing a lot of business with Rock Creek right now. They've been very good to us as far as customers. So I'm going to leave it at that. Do we open it for questions, maybe? And
Sure. Thank you for the information.
Oh.
Have any questions?
I have questions.
I have just a couple questions.
Sure.
First, in terms of the geographic reach and the scope of the services, where can you go with the call and ride service?
Call and ride is, we design them for the communities. It's a very geographical design. And let's see, I think I could scroll down here. We have a map on here. When the town applied for the grant, let's see, I don't think we can do that, can we, Alex? But I think we cover the entire town. We cover the town of Superior city limit or town limits.
So you can't take it into, but I mean, you take it over to Vista and to Monarch High School. So
Actually, I'm sorry. Actually, we do. When Alex and I sat down, I don't remember everybody we talked to, Alex, during the process, but we also looked at what the previous call and ride did out here. So we have some trips going to, let's see, we served the Louisville Rec Center. That was a demand. We served the Louisville Library. That was a demand, if I remember correctly. And the areas, the shopping areas, kind of over on the Louisville side. So you can't get too large, because once you start getting really past about 5 or 6 square miles, the trip length becomes longer. And the longer the trip length, the less likely we can group rides. And then the numbers go down. We do go to, there we go, we serve Monarch High School and a Vista. Thank you so much. So, and we serve them all way down south.
Okay, great. And then as to the ridership for the Rock Creek Aftercare that's using it, is that shuttling kids from El Dorado K-8 for after-school programs? Is that for field trips? How are the kids using it?
They're doing it for schools, my understanding. So parents drop them off there at certain times, or they pick them up, and they take them to school and back.
Okay.
And they're also using it for some after-school care. And the reason we started going to the library is because they requested service to the library, and we thought that'd be advantageous for us because we want to keep the numbers up and strong. Because if you've been here for a while, you realize this is the second time the call and ride has been in the service in Superior, because the first one we lost a lot of ridership, and we just want to keep that ridership strong, keep the call and ride out here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I've personally used the service. One of my kids has used the service a couple times, and it's great. And the drivers are fantastic. You know, we've experienced the flexibility
Great, thank
around
you.
that. So good to hear.
There are two great drivers out here.
Yeah. Since you're the guy of our odd jobs at RTD, have you what can you tell me about the hours of operations, and have you looked at expanded hours and expanded service areas on certain times of the day? Is it something that we
You
could
mean for call and ride specifically?
or call and ride or other RTD like services?
Well, let me just tell you, I'll just go into call and ride a little bit, because we've had over 25 of them. We have 22 of them right now, and yes, over the years, it's part of the area I manage. We've tried a variety of things. We've tried Saturday service, we've tried later service into the evenings, and we've tried some Sunday service. Basically, within all transit services, whatever you carry on weekday, it instantly drops by 50% on Saturday. And it works the same with call and ride too. So all of our call and rides, for the most part, almost all of them, started with Saturday service. I think we have 2 or 3 of them have Saturday service now. Saturday, we just don't get the ridership.
Right.
Sunday, that's just made worse. The 7 o'clock end time that we have, this call and ride originally used to run till 8, not this one, but the previous one that RTD was paying for. And that last hour from 7 on, the ridership just drops. It's just extremely unproductive. We were getting 1 boarding per hour on all of the call and rides. I don't think any out of 22 or 23 at the time, I don't think we got one that had more than 1 per hour, so we cut that back. We do, except for there is a call and ride right next door, the Louisville and the Interlockens call and rides, they run until 10. And the reason we keep those, the ridership's pretty decent on those two, but that was a while back. The 228 used to run late, and we kind of swapped that off. We moved those few customers on the 228 to the call and ride and expanded its hours till 10, and then we cut back to 228.
Okay.
So
the 228. So what time does 228 stop running down?
you know what? I don't recall, and I'm sorry, my colleague who was coming tonight, I didn't bring that with me.
That's okay.
Actually, maybe I did. I don't think of.
There we go.
Yeah. 228 on weekdays runs to about 8 o'clock.
Okay.
It runs a little bit later on Saturdays.
And then, do you have a program for if we wanted Alex or our liaison to work on something unique, whether or not it's the call and ride bus for the Chili Fest shuttle parking instead of the yellow school bus, or we had Monarch Homecoming the other night, and the kids all got to go out to dinner, and they travel in packs of 18. Have we experimented with one-time events?
Well, at the end of the actually, we have and we used to. At the end of the second Bush administration, we have what's called the federal charter regulations, and we have to follow these regulations that the federal government sets down. they had been in place for years, and we used to do things like that. We used to do Aurora, and I don't think we did anything out here, but Longmont. We used to go out and provide services for things like that in the
Right.
community. But the Bush administration came down there last year, and they said, no more. It was technically against the rules. You cannot provide service that competes with private charter companies. If a private company, and this came out of the Reagan years, if you remember trickle-down theory, if a private company can provide that service, and I'm simplifying it,
Right.
we can't compete against them. So basically, if you can hire somebody to provide that service for your Chili Fest, which you can, we can't do it.
Okay.
There are, it's never that, it's just cut
understand,
and
but-
dried, but
right.
for the most part, we can't do it.
Okay, thank you.
There's a group in our neighborhood that uses the call and ride on a regular basis. It's mostly for student use to Monarch K-8 school. So I reached out to them knowing that you were going to be here just to get their comments or feedback to pass on to you. And some of the things that I was asked to put forward was, one, it would be nice if somebody was always at the phone to answer when somebody calls in to request a ride. And I'm not sure if that's just not possible because of manpower, because this is an unusual program and not a usual program. But if that's something that could be done, that would be.
I can address that.
Sure.
Actually, this past year, what we did, yes, you can book online, or the driver can answer the phone, but he or she cannot answer it while the vehicle is moving for safety
Of
reasons.
course.
So last year, we convinced our board to let us hire 2 additional. Well, this service is run by Via Mobility. I'm sure everybody probably knows who Via is. They're a great
Yeah.
organization. So we had them hire 1 additional person to help out on the phones. So there is somebody sitting back at the office for the most part, not every minute of the day, but they're there 8.5 hours. If it goes to voicemail, these folks are checking every call and ride's voicemail once an hour to try to get a phone call back to the person sooner than later. Because if a driver gets really busy and it went to voicemail, it might have been 2, even 3 hours sometimes before we could get back to that customer. So we're trying to take that step. Now, I audit these drivers. I did 4 audits last year. And what I mean by audit, we call every call and ride and every shift, and we see how soon they return the call, not from an RTD phone. And I have to say, last time every call and ride scored 100%. Everybody called back within 2 hours. It may have been the office staff, it may have been the driver, but we got 100% callbacks on all shifts of all call and rides, weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Okay.
It's not perfect. I'm not going to tell you it is, but we're trying.
Yep. No, I think the perception is that it operates like a taxi cab service, that you have a central office,
Yeah, we
that you
don't.
have a dispatcher there all the time.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And-
No,
but-
it's our service, because it's more driver dispatched. That's why we can group rides and carry more people. If you look at our accessoride, which is dispatched from one office, they carry 1.5 boardings per hour. Dispatch doesn't mean more rides.
Right,
It means
okay.
less in my world.
Okay.
Driver has flexibility.
Okay. So I should have prefaced before I start asking questions. Everybody in the group, this carpool, actually had nothing but good things to say about the service, and they're really
Well, that's
appreciative.
good.
In fact, they're hesitant to say anything because they didn't want you to take it as a criticism. They're just brainstorming, saying maybe this could make the service better.
No,
But
no,
everybody
no,
loves the
yeah,
service.
and that's just it. We try. We just try. I can't tell you I know all the answers, and most of our service, anything that we change, is usually coming from the drivers or the customers.
Okay.
Because I don't live in Superior. Alex will tell me something, and it's, I have to listen to what the drivers, the community, and the staff here tells us what's going on, and if we have to make changes, we will.
Okay. Now, in our packet, the average boardings per hour, and this was January through July, was 3.3, And you'd said that it's actually 3.7. Is that
It's
year to
gone.
date?
Yes, it's gone up. During the summer, we had last couple months, we've had some good ridership.
Yeah.
I think it was 3.5 or 3.6 last time I looked.
Yeah, because that was one of my questions. Is this was taken up through July, but I got to believe that. I mean, we didn't use it last year, but now we're
Okay.
using it.
Yeah.
So once the school year started, I'm assuming that made the
Yep.
ridership go up a bit. Okay.
Yes, it did.
If right now we've got 4 or 5 students in the group, if we had more, what if we had a dozen? Is that there's a discounted rate for students, and I think that was $1.30. If you get a dozen students, does that change the rate at all?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
And I think we're only carrying routinely, the drivers told me only 2 students right now on a routine basis, but we have sporadic calls too, to Monarch.
Okay. And then what happens if you do have multiple students? And now they have to be at school at a certain time, but what if you get 5 or 6 students in our subdivision, but then across Rock Creek, you get another 5 or 6 that have to be at school at the same time? How do you manage
Yeah,
that?
we do it first come, first serve.
Okay.
So whatever first student called us, and let's say they go to Monarch, and they book, and the ride's available, and we book a ride with them. If there's another school over here, and I'm sorry, I know there's Monarch and the schools next to it, but I don't think there's another school here in Superior that I recall. But let's say there's another school over here. We're going to Monarch at 7:30. This school starts at 7:30 too. We can't serve this, so we try to build on this.
Okay.
Yeah, we just can't be everywhere at the same time.
And then when we first, well, I guess there's 2 shuttle buses that were actually allocated to Superior, correct?
There's actually 1 in service, and we had to buy 2.
Right.
1 as a backup.
So I'm assuming the backup is exactly the same. Is it just sitting idle until?
It's just
Something
used as
happens?
a spare bus.
Okay.
Yeah, when we applied, I worked with Alex on the grant. When the grant was applied for, if we didn't have enough at the time, we have to have a certain spare ratio. There was not, so we had to put in for 2 buses.
Okay.
We just didn't have a choice.
Would you ever get that one out if there was big demand in the morning to take students to Monarch and Monarch K-8? Would you?
Well, it's not budgeted. I mean, like right now, there are peaks of high demand. I mean, because we do turn some people down. Right now, 10 to 2 it's more open, 10 a.m., but during the peaks, it's busier, obviously. No, only if it's not warranted right now. It really isn't. But the grant wouldn't cover anything additional.
Got it, understood.
Yeah.
And then the last question is that some of the parents in the group will go to certain locations to buy bulk tickets, bulk coupon books. Is there any chance of having those available here in Superior, so that Superior
They're
residents?
sold at King Soopers and Safeways right now.
So the Safeway in Superior has them?
Should.
Oh, I didn't know
Yep.
that. Good. Okay, that's it.
Maybe you could review the schedule for the remaining part of our grant and what happens
Sure.
as the years go on.
Well, let's see. It's if I remember correctly, it's a 3-year grant, and we just hit into basically year 2. So everything continues on. At the end of the 2nd year, usually about 2 months into the 3rd year, we do a review. And what that review is first of all, I do a financial review and see where we're at money-wise, because we're the federal recipients. RTD receives the money. Even if we weren't running the service, we still receive the money and we give it back to the community. So I'm going to look and see where we're at budget-wise, because maybe we're under budget. Maybe we can look, and it's supposed to end in August. Maybe we could say, well, hey, it can go until December, depending on where we're at. And then we want to make that review if RTD is going to pick this up service-wise. Because about 9 months out is when I need to be looking at it, the planners, and saying, hey, Alex, at the end of the time, we've decided to keep it or we've decided not to keep it. So we have another good year. And the numbers right now are very good. We're happy with the numbers.
And so as long as the ridership numbers stay up, that's what you're looking at as RTD's decision as whether to pick it up or not.
Right, yes.
Okay. Okay. Appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me up here.
All right. Our next presentation is Heather with the Superior Chamber. Welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. As a few of you got to see this weekend, I just wanted to recap on behalf of the Chamber and saying thank you for another great partnership for the 17th Annual Chili Fest. It was an absolute fantastic showing, I believe, across the board from the residents and the business owners alike. And just a few statistics, because I know Patrick and his whole staff will put some more numbers together as we slowly kind of put the end of the project together. We had over 57 business vendors. 40 of those were chamber members. We had over 200 gallons of chili served in Restaurant Row, which hosted 7 different restaurants, one of which, Rocky Mountain Fire. Our fantastic service men and women were included in that group, along with the brand new Brunelleschi's over from the sports stable, the new owners at Sushiyama. We also had the executive chef from Sunrise Senior Living in Broomfield, as well as Zeka Indian Cuisine, also in Broomfield. Flats Restaurant, which is located in the Renaissance Hotel. And then also the new executive chef over at Avista Hospital joined us for the first time. And his rave reviews were that he will not only be cooking in Restaurant Row next year, but he will also be competing on the other side of the parking lot. So he became a quick fan. We really had a positive feedback as well. There's always things we want to improve. I think that's one of our challenges as a team. But I think one of the greatest compliments came from one of the beer vendors, too, who said as he was leaving the event that of all the places they serve beer, and they serve it at quite a few different locations, that this one is the most organized and most well-received and fantastically organized event. So he purposely, on his way out with his truck, stopped to make sure a few people heard that. So I wanted to pass that on to you, and a sign of appreciation for the continued support for our community events. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Job well done. All right. We're on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve items A through G?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Ryan. And just looking to see, do we need a roll call vote on
Yes,
this?
because of the investment one, I think so.
Okay. Roll call vote?
Lasis,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Passes unanimously. All right, 11H. Mark.
Okay, so I pulled this just because anytime that we're awarding a contract, I think it's a good idea for us to discuss the bidding process. I understand that we're not required under Colorado law and services contracts necessarily to bid something out as opposed to construction contracts. But I don't necessarily agree that that's what we should be doing. I think it may be a best practice for us to bid things out going forward, and at a minimum to have a discussion of who is applying for this particular contract and why they're going to be awarded it. So that was the reason why I pulled it from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Alex Aronella, Public Works Director. For several of our services contracts, we've had a practice and part of our purchasing manuals to allow us to have contracts that renew on up to a 4-year basis. So our practice for snow removal is to bid this out every 4 years. And we did the last bidding in the fall of 2016. So the first year of this contract was in 2016, 2017. We're going into the second year of this contract. When we put those bid documents together, we have a cost of living increase that the contractor can use a CPI and ask for a CPI increase for the next year of the contract. So we protect the contractor that his costs don't get out of hand and he doesn't get a return on his investments, because for this particular contract, they're buying equipment, having equipment available, they're staffing up and so forth. So it's a pretty big thing to have this contract and to gear up, and to do that on an annual basis would be hard for a contractor to do because they bought equipment and they lose the contract. So that's why we've done that every 4 years, to let them make an investment in our community to gear up for a contract like this.
And Alex, if you can remind me, when this contract went out to bid back in 2016, at that point we only had two
bidders, yes.
applicants that were going for that contract at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to add on to that, it is in the town's adopted purchasing policy. The 4 years.
The 4-year
Yes.
for services contract
Yes.
specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would echo what Alex said. And the landscape contract is another good example. It's to switch companies every year would be not possible for staff to manage on a yearly basis, to keep switching companies, because you have to get them up to speed on like for landscaping, where all the irrigation is and all that kind of stuff. So it's helpful to staff to have this policy in place as well.
Okay. And Alex, if you could just talk to town's opinion on performance so far.
Sure. A couple of things that yeah, it's hard to measure performance in this contract without knowing something about the storms and so forth. Just some highlights. We keep track of statistics like the amount of snow we get, and then how the response is in terms of tons of material used and so forth. For 2016, 2017, we had kind of an average year, maybe a little less than average year in terms of snow removal. We had 73 inches of snowfall, where our average is about 82. That compared with the previous 2 years where we had over 100 inches of snow. Last year, they the hours plowed was about 700 hours, versus previous years we had over 1,000 hours of plowing. A couple of things that we did a little bit different last year. We used less solid material. That's the ice slicer that we put down that kind of sticks to the ground. And we use more of the liquid de-icer material. And that's because we had more ice storms, or smaller storms, but they developed ice, so we wanted to treat them with de-icing materials to get a quicker response. And that also allows you don't have to sweep up the sand as much with the liquids. So it's a little bit difference than we had previous years. For this last year's contract, and when we bid it out, we requested that we have 4 vehicles available. In previous years, we had 3. We wanted to have better response during the big snowstorms to get out into the cul-de-sacs and some of the low volume roads. And so that helped us this year. We had 4 or 5 major storms where we had more than 5 inches of accumulation, where we had to get into the low volume roads. And the response, I thought, was very good. We got a lot fewer complaints than we had in prior years. So I thought things went well, having that 4th truck available and having them to respond. And since we have a local contractor, he's very good about responding. He's on top of the storms all the time. He's in touch with the sheriff, and when the conditions are ripe, he's ready to go.
Yeah, and all the trucks are equipped with GPS, so we're able to.
Right. That's been a big improvement over the last 2 years. We have GPS on all the trucks, so we have in real time, we can tell where the trucks are at. And if we have complaints that my road wasn't plowed, we can call up and say, look, your road was plowed on this and this and this hour. So that's been an improvement, and actually the contractor likes that. I thought he think that Big Brother was looking over his shoulder, but he likes to have that and have that information available to people that call in, that we are out at 2 o'clock in the morning. You may not see them at 6, but they've been out much sooner than what residents would think. So I think things went pretty well, last year. We had no qualms with the contractor. If we did, we would have come back and requested that we rebid. So we're quite comfortable proceeding with this contractor.
Yeah, I think we've got a real unique situation in town where we've got a local business that is our contractor and able to get onto storms quickly and provide great service. I know they personally take a lot of pride in the work they do, and it shows when you are driving around in the snow and you leave town and you go to maybe a neighboring town. It's pretty consistently that our roads will be showing clear before, and people notice that.
And a couple of things we did this past year is that we have areas like in Sagamore and others where when you have a lot of snow, there's no place to put it, and then it accumulates and ices up. So we got on top of those areas this past winter, got out there with front-end loaders and actually hauled it off before it became a real problem. And that's something we hadn't done as much in the past. So that helped things.
Okay. Chris?
I agree with Trustee Lasis that putting contracts out to bid is healthy for us getting the best price that we can get for the best service. But I've also come to appreciate the policy that we put in place. I think we did it the first year, or it was in place when I first got on the board. And we also, to reiterate what the mayor had said, I think it's a policy also that if we have a local business that we can include in the mix of that bid, we need to do that and try and have them service the work that we have out there. So I think the system is working really well, and it doesn't prohibit us from changing up the contractor if we just don't like the service. If they're not performing, if the costs are going sky high and we think there's a red flag, we can always change and put it out to bid. So we don't have to go 4 years. We have the ability to do that. So I'm happy with the service. I think the community by and large is happy with the service.
One thing I forgot to mention, so we basically have a 7-month contract, and we've always had a problem in the past that May 1st comes when
Right.
the contract ran out. What happens? So last year we put in the provision. Here's the cost we're going to have if we go past May 1st, and we had that in place. And you can see our last storm was May 19th this year, so we were able to. That was very easy. He knew what was coming. The storm was coming. We had rates established that were higher rates because we included more of the equipment cost for that particular period.
Yeah, again, having a local business take care of this is great. I remember there were some issues in the past when we had, I forget the name of the firm that we had before that came from somewhere else, and getting them here, anticipating the storm and getting stuff down before the storm hits and reacting quickly for a big storm that comes in quickly was an issue. So we don't really have those same issues with the local contractor.
Now remember, the hardest ones are the shoulder seasons where, you're getting, you have a warm period of time and then the storm rolls in, and is it going to freeze? Are we going to get the snow or not? Those are always the hardest ones, and we get ice forming right away, and it's hard to predict those storms and get out. Sometimes they hit at 5 o'clock in rush hour, and it hasn't snowed a flake, all day. All of a sudden, it's icing up at 5 o'clock. Right. So those are the hardest ones to predict. We had, I think, 2 or 3 times this year where we mobilized. We had the trucks on the road. Nothing happened. We had to pay for it, but we were out there ready to go if the ice hit. So we were on top of things this year.
Okay, good. Anything further? All right, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-45, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Superior Maintenance, Inc. for snow removal and ice control services.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Hansen, and roll call vote.
Folsom?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Lasis?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item number 12, which is discussion and direction regarding recommendations from RCAC, Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee's chair, Izzy Snell, is here tonight to present the committee's recommendations to the board and receive any direction the board would like to provide. Nice to see you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Glad I was able to make it on time since everything's going quickly. So in May, we presented on 2 separate proposals. One was kind of a pilot project to try to work with builders to promote additional sustainability projects in addition to kind of what the builders are already planning on doing. We also proposed updating the energy code to the most recent version. Right now we're back at the 2012 version, and so our proposal was to amend that to the 2015 version. And then since that time, and I'm happy to provide as much information on those as you'd like, depending on what you prefer. And then more recently, we had 2 additional proposals. One is to see if we could change the name of the committee from the Recycling Conservation Advisory Committee to something like the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee. We've been doing a lot of work on a number of fronts beyond just waste. And in fact, I know Trustee Hammerly previously asked us to come up with a set of recommendations around how individuals within the community can work to reduce their carbon footprint. And so that's something we've been working on, in addition to all these other sustainability proposals. And so our hope is that that would kind of bring us more in line with some of the neighboring regions around us, and also just kind of recognize the work that we're currently doing. And finally, we've had a number of challenges with not having enough volunteers on the committee. And so there was a lot of discussion about the fact that maybe if we had something that was not quite so focused on recycling, that we'd be able to generate more interest. So there's that. And the final item I'd like to talk about is seeing if it makes sense to amend our work plan to review the large item pickup, which was an event that happened in the past. It was subject to quite an amount of abuse by people that left out kind of large construction materials and other things that were inappropriate for the event. And so there'd be a number of challenges to overcome. But we want to see if the board would be interested in having us amend our work plan to discuss further and see if it makes sense to revisit and if some of those challenges could be overcome. So that's a really quick overview of all of our proposals. I'm happy to go more in depth on any one of them or answer questions. But I want to see what would be most helpful.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Board questions?
I'll suppose I'll go in order. So first, thanks for the volunteer effort. It's unfortunate that you don't have more volunteers. I think everybody has a committee that they like. I like this committee. I think you guys are doing great work, and I think it's very important. So, so obviously, in terms of my 2 cents, a name to better reflect your the work you're doing today. Certainly supportive of that. I agree. I think it serves a dual purpose. Number one, I think the name you have today doesn't do the committee justice. And second, I think it would help you attracting some new volunteers, some new talent there. One of the things that struck me, by the way, when we had the Youth Advisory Committee, do we have anything in our bylaws that would prohibit somebody under the age of 18 from participating on any of our other committees?
I'll take a look.
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't look.
You mean a committee member for one committee? I think that, no, I've asked that question before. We can't have committee members working on 2 separate committees.
The question was just specific.
It was age specific. Right.
So
I think we get a lot of kids that are
Yeah.
on the Youth Advisory Committee that I see a level of maturity and innovation from them that I would wonder if they might be interested in another committee.
We used to have someone that was,
Right.
how old was she? 16 or 17 when she applied and got on?
Anyway, so that might help.
Sure.
I think it would. I'm not suggesting it's by no means reflection of the community that you would reduce your standards. I think some of those kids, young adults, may have a different way of looking at things. Anyway, so that's for my 2 cents. In terms of the larger pickup items, I think there's some complexities here, obviously. I am personally very supportive of this. I think we just need to find a way to make this happen without it being too onerous on town staff. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about in a budget meeting that we have next week or in a couple weeks. I want to figure out what that might look like, because it's going to require some, I don't know if somebody has to have a ticket or a permit in order to give something, or maybe it's poundage or tonnage or whatever. It feels like there's a way to do this. I would love to tap the expertise of RCAC to find a way to do that, because I think it's important. Because otherwise, I think people are chopping stuff up and it's going in the garbage can. And I'd rather do it the right way and try to recycle some of those things properly.
Trustee Ryan, there's no age limit. I just confirmed.
Great, thank you.
But there is a limit that Trustee
Right.
Hansen talked about, that you can only be on one committee at a time.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about the third issue, the sustainability options for enhanced building code requirements. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? And that's a pilot program. It's voluntary. It's not mandatory. Just tell me a little more. Or I should have asked that as a question.
Sure.
Instead of a affirmative statement.
Yeah, so actually, I believe we have the previous presentation up here. All right, that's the document. All right. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So this kind of overviews some of the benefits of sustainability in general, particularly as it relates to the proposed downtown that's being worked on. And so essentially the rationale, or the reason that this came to be, was that we were looking for a kind of short-term option to promote additional sustainability above and beyond what the town's currently doing. We recognize that the downtown center is going to be a really big project, and that after that's done, there are going to be limited additional opportunities to improve sustainability for brand new buildings. And so this was part of a two-pronged approach, where we'd have kind of a short-term option to promote sustainability immediately, and then we could also look at long-term options around things like improving the energy code. And so the original idea behind it was that it'd be something that'd be used in the commercial development review process as a way of having a set of kind of vetted, approved sustainability projects. And of course, you could have additional projects outside the scope of this document, but we want to do a little more vetting for those custom projects. And so the way the document's set up, essentially, is that each sustainability measure is giving a certain point value, which is designed to reflect roughly kind of how big of an impact it has and how difficult it is to implement. And so one option could be to ask that builders meet a certain point threshold. And we've been kind of reviewing that recently, too. So there may be other options as well to look at kind of on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the builders are already doing to promote sustainability, whether that may make sense and have more of a voluntary approach. But was the original idea, is have it kind of for every single builder, ask them to meet a certain number of points.
Right, there's a phrase in here that I really like. Invite applicants to include these measures voluntarily through their submittal, and then highlight these items for the Planning Commission Board when they're included through the FDP process.
Mm-hmm.
So that part I really like. Taking a position around sustainability as a community, and then making sure that those developers have the opportunity to understand what those standards may look, what those requirements may look like. I don't want to use a softer word than standard. What the requirements may look like, and then disclosing that as part of their application process to the board, as well as to the PC. So I mean, I like that part. I will admit some of the scoring, I didn't quite track all of the scoring, but it's not my area of expertise necessarily.
Sure, and we're happy to have a discussion with the board as well if points should be shifted, or if certain things make more sense than others. But really, kind of the underlying goal was, again, to have a kind of a short-term option that really promotes sustainability and make sure it's in the conversation every step of the way through the building process. I know a lot of the developers in the downtown have already kind of embraced sustainability, which is fantastic. And really, our goal is to look at ways that we can kind of go above and beyond that to really promote buildings that are as green and sustainable as possible.
Right. And you also have an ask here, if I'm sort of reading between the lines, that we consider some additional line items, additional budget for staff as a liaison. or staff resources?
Absolutely. That's Martin and I were talking about that, and that's kind of one of the biggest things that we see going forward as an opportunity to promote sustainability within Superior. Right now, it's really hard for staff to take the time necessary to do almost any additional sustainability measures, and so having an additional staff position to focus primarily on sustainability would be a huge help in helping the town meet its goals and allowing us to kind of expand the scope of our recommendations as well.
Okay. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on the staff question? I'm just kind of taking making some notes here for kind of where everybody.
I mean, it's the opinion on the staff question, I think, is a dialogue, right? I mean, from my perspective, it would be, it's a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would not be against it, but my number one focus is going to be around increased enforcement for traffic and safety. And so if I was balancing traffic and safety versus environmental sustainability, you could have me for a couple Saturdays a year, and I'll figure it out, and I'll roll up my sleeves, and I'll help you. I can't get out there and slow cars down. Sheriff Chamberlain doesn't let me do that. So my priority is going to be enforcement, traffic, and safety. So no, I would not be supportive of a additional position for this.
Okay, Chris.
Actually, I'll pick up for where Kevin just left off. I agree that I think maybe it's too soon to make that decision on a new staff member. We've been talking about making Reggie a full-time staff member for a couple of years now, so I agree with Kevin also that would be my first priority. That doesn't mean, however, though, that I don't think we should have a sustainability officer or person on staff at some point. But I think what the proper way to do this would be to change RCAC's name, change what they're supposed to be doing or what you guys would like to be doing in more sustainability projects. And then from that, then we say, okay, what's the demand for a sustainability officer or somebody in town? And if we really feel that there is a demand, then maybe next year's budget we bring that in and we have that discussion. But let's first create the demand for it, then go back and talk about bringing that person in.
Sure.
So I'm all for the name change. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent. Thanks.
I also like the idea of bringing in students, that once you change the name, that makes it more appealing to more people. We can market to students and encourage them to sign on, because I think having the sustainability part as part of the name, I think that would attract a lot of people. The commercial building codes, that's a topic that for a goal planning or a retreat meeting for the rest of the board. We've talked about this in the past. I think there's some hesitation on making drastic changes. But I do think that there's opportunity to talk about it more. Maybe there's somewhere in the middle that we can meet and to make it equitable for everybody. Adding the large pickup items, I was opposed to having it go away before, but I do understand the reasons why. And just in the one meeting that we had, the last meeting, you guys came up with several ideas on how you could control that. So I think if you put this back on the work plan for the rest of this year, then maybe next year we can actually put it in, come to the board to have it as part of the budget for the next budget cycle.
Sure.
I think it's too late to do it now, but
Yeah,
I certainly think that we get the ball rolling. You guys come up with a good plan on how we could make it work within a certain budget. If that budget is $25,000 or $50,000 or $10,000, we come up with a way to make it work. So I'm definitely for putting that back on the work plan now, with the assumption that we will bring it back to the board for next year's budget cycle.
Gotcha. And if I may just step in too. So with regards to the longer term energy code, we actually did review quite a large number of different options, looking at all different regions around us. And we looked at everything from enhancing the current energy code to adopting a full green code, which moves beyond energy into things like, are you reusing materials in building, water sustainability, all that type of stuff. And what we found for the most part was that most of the options we reviewed would take a lot of time and commitment and resources. But updating the IECC, which is our current code, to the most recent version would be the most economical and probably the most sensical for the town. It shouldn't require any additional staff members. There will be some budgeting required because the existing folks that implement the energy code will have to be trained up on the newer version. But that's really what we found as kind of getting the most bang for the buck in terms of having kind of minimal resource allocation compared to other options, while still getting some additional value that could apply to the downtown. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Okay, but are you saying that you actually want to change the code to require builders to work at a certain level, or are you saying something different?
Currently, builders are already required to meet the 2012 IECC code, and so this would be requiring them to meet the 2015 instead of 2012, and that's the only difference. So it's something they're already required to do. It's just meeting a slightly more stringent version of that.
Now, we had, this was a few years ago, but when Randy Goodson was still working with us, but he had said that there was a lot of the proposals to be more green he was already considering doing. So it would be nice if we could, instead of making it a requirement, that we make it more educational. And we had discussed before that maybe the Chamber of Commerce is involved with this, that we go out to the local businesses, and if there's a new developer in town building new structures, let's get the Chamber of Commerce involved. Maybe there's businesses within the Chamber that specialize in this kind of stuff that could help us go out and educate the builders and the local businesses that are already established on how they can operate a little bit more green. So I'd be more for an educational process first as opposed to making it a requirement, and then see where that goes from there.
Sure, and for reference, we do have the PACE program, which is designed to be an educational outreach effort, and that's a good example of something where there's been kind of limited staff availability to really go out and promote that. So we do have that as an option. It provides advice on sustainability to new and existing business customers, and provides a wide range of low-cost recommendations, and does the analysis about where there are rebates and incentives available. So there is that, and we can certainly look at promoting that type of approach more. There are a number of other areas around us, though. They're also adopting the most recent IECC code. Certainly Boulder is doing their own thing, so that's kind of a whole separate issue. But increasingly, so my day-to-day work, stepping back from my chair position, is working with utilities all across North America, figure out how to implement energy efficiency programs and provide rebates and things like that. And one of the larger scale trends we're seeing is that there's a lot of interest for corporations across the board of all sizes to be more green, and that actually having an area that promotes sustainability actively is actually appealing for those types of businesses. And I think you're seeing that already. A lot of the developers that are coming into the town are intentionally trying to be sustainable as much as possible. So I do think that there's a big benefit as well to having more stringent baselines. And again, it's not something as crazy as adopting a full green code or anything like that. Okay. So
now, so I just learned a couple of things, or one thing that I didn't know before. So the business that you're in, did you say you just work with utilities, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so is what you do, is it applicable to other businesses that are not utilities, like a toy store, or it's just some small mom and pop business?
Absolutely. So what we do is, and again, I'm not sure exactly how relevant this is to the conversation, but it can provide information about where I'm coming from.
It's relevant because it's the education component that I'm after, and I think that if we can start leveraging people of your knowledge more in the community, then I think that's very beneficial.
Sure. So kind of my role within eSource where I work is to kind of help utilities figure out how, what energy efficiency measures are available for residential, commercial, industrial customers. And what makes sense, what's cost effective, and what's not. And so looking at the big picture rather than just kind of advocating for green stuff regardless of externalities. And so certainly we've looked a lot at different particular business types, residential customers, large industrial. So there's a lot of information that we deal with that relates to all sorts of different types of business customers. And again, it's helping utilities learn more about their end use customers and what makes sense.
Yep. So. Now, regarding the PACE program, we are aware of that. How much is that being utilized in Superior?
To my knowledge, not a whole lot. I'm not sure if you have a different view of that, but it's something where it's been kind of difficult to get enough outreach to really approach all the businesses in Superior. One of the challenges in general with approaching businesses, existing businesses, is that especially the smaller and mid-sized businesses tend to be very focused on their day-to-day activities and just running the business, which is totally understandable. And so it's oftentimes hard to kind of get them to take enough time to really consider different efficiency options. And so that's something where if we want something like PACE to be successful, in my view, it's worth having a pretty large-scale outreach effort that really is, reaching out and engaging folks in the community, beyond just kind of a, single pamphlet or something like that.
Well, is it, and I'm sorry, we're going way off track here, but I think this is interesting to me, and I think that it is something that we should consider doing, that when when a builder comes to build a town square, is it possible that somewhere when they're designing their plans that we incorporate what PACE has to offer with a meeting with them so that maybe they have a better understanding of what's out there? I mean, maybe they just don't know as much, but if we have them involved in that program from the start, maybe when they do present an FDP to us, that it already complies with the 2015 codes.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, let's get the resources we have out there more engaged with the existing businesses, but also contractors that are coming in to build new businesses. Why can't we do that?
Sure.
Yes, Kendra's leaning towards me.
I just want to point out, just real quick, that the buildings that are coming through the town center development agreement have vested rights. So this voluntary is great, but as far as moving on to a 2015 code, we're probably stuck with the 2012 code for anything that's already in the town center. I'm just, as far as a mandatory, I realize the voluntary is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm actually fine with that.
Okay.
But I'm saying let's before we make something mandatory, let's do something educational first. And if it's just a matter of taking a program like PACE that we already have in place, let's somehow get them linked up to the builders when they first come out to start, before they build and they're doing their plans. Let's get them engaged with them, just like we'd have them come to and meet with one of our advisory committees. Why couldn't PACE be at our RCAC meeting? And the builder comes in and meets with them. So I don't know, just trying to think.
I'd be happy to discuss that further.
broader,
And both PACE and actually the Energy Star Building Certification Program do provide certification to high-performing buildings. And so I think that's a great way to have a voluntary approach to recognize businesses that are doing really well within the community, particularly when we already have so many green buildings coming into the downtown already. So I think that'd be great.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Mark? So changing the name, I'm all for it. I'm interested in hearing the suggestions, and I think that's great. On the large item pickup, I guess my questions are just how much it would cost. It seems to me that we already have these services available through Waste Connections, and I think it comes down to a question of informing the community. I mean, I certainly didn't know that Waste Connections would come and pick up large items from my house for a fee. So I think that maybe we need to do a better job of informing the community about having that option there and finding out exactly what it would cost before we decide to commit to another program that was historically being, abused by people and businesses for reasons that it shouldn't be used for. So I guess I'd like to see some numbers in terms of what it would cost to bring that project back, and then see, to what extent people are actually availing themselves of using Waste Connections for large item pickup. I think that right now we may be just not sufficiently tapping a resource that's available to us, and we may not necessarily need to have an additional program offered by the town if we could just use something that's already available. On the building code issue, so I'm confused about the suggestion, so maybe we could just clarify this.
Sure.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're suggesting both kind of a voluntary sustainability commitment, but then also a mandatory change to the building code to get up to speed with 2015.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So if we do one or both, let's just say we go with the voluntary commitment. I'm concerned about exactly how that would work with the quasi-judicial process. If we've got building codes, are there other jurisdictions that you're aware of that have adopted these sorts of voluntary presentations, and what would happen if somebody submitted something without making any sort of effort to meet the voluntary guidelines, and then they get rejected in the application process? Would they have grounds to contest? I wouldn't want us to open up a can of worms here in terms of an.
And that's what I mentioned in my report. I would have to
unintended
do a little
consequence.
bit more research into
Right.
this. I agree with you, because if we have criteria that are being applied to an application, they have to be set forth somewhere, and they actually have to be criteria.
Right.
And if they're not criteria, but we're still applying them for or against people, then they really are criteria. So that would
Right.
I hear your concern, and that was part of my concern.
Right.
I don't think that would happen. Because if the board were to reject an application because it didn't meet a higher standard, then we would be changing the code to where we would require them to be a higher standard.
Right, and that's my concern.
Yeah, and we're saying, no, we don't want to do that because we're a little concerned that we wouldn't attract developers to come to our town because it's going to be a little more difficult or costly to build here. I'm saying just make it a voluntary thing and educate them.
Sure.
And
I
Yeah,
mean,
but the point is, if somebody submits an application and there is this voluntary checklist, okay, you're going to do, LED lighting, and you're going to have, triple pane glass and all these sorts of things that we think are the best practices to be as sustainable as possible, and they don't take any of those steps, and then their application gets rejected. Then they can hypothetically argue, oh, well, it was because I didn't make those commitments, that's why my application was denied.
Yeah, I think that we're overthinking it too much. I really do. I think that if we had that mindset where everything that we did, we'd never do anything.
understood.
So
and some applicants do already come in and say, my building is going to be LEED certified. I mean, some of this
Right,
happens, and they just put it in their application, we plan to make it LEED certified or this or that. But I think when it comes down to listing standards, I think that's where we're getting into a little gray
I'm
area.
not saying that we provide a checklist of all
Mm-hmm.
these things that we'd like them to do. All I'm saying is let's take the program like PACE, and let's get them involved with them. Say, hey, here's a great opportunity for you guys to meet this certain standard.
Mhm.
Do with it what you want.
Sure.
Right.
Well, and often the building, to be honest, sometimes the building standards are actually after you've already done your work. So in other words, the FDP gets approved sometimes before the buildings have been planned, the buildings themselves. And then they go in for a building permit, and that's when this code gets applied. And then so sometimes it will be after your review. So I think it's a great idea to get this voluntary and perhaps get, RCAC or whatever the name is going to be involved early on and talk to the builder. And that may be entirely separate from your review process, depending on what, how detailed this is. If it's in the building, it's the buildings itself, that may be after you've already approved your FDP.
Yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm just
Right.
saying, we got a service here. Let's throw it to the
Right.
business owners and the developers and let them do with it whatever.
I mean, supporting environmental sustainability is already one of our town board goals,
Yep.
and I'm all for meeting those goals. And as a board, generally speaking, just proclaiming that this is one of our goals. We believe in environmental sustainability, and we hope that people that are coming into our town share those goals, and they want to do everything that they can, to be environmentally sustainable. We all live here in Boulder County. We value the outdoors. We care about the environment. I'm just reluctant to impose additional, restrictions on developers or builders who would invest in the town. I don't want Superior to lose out to Louisville or Broomfield, because frankly, we're all competing for the same hotels and for the same commercial outfits, and there's limited space, and a lot of people want to be in this area, but they're happy to go to Louisville, they're happy to go to Broomfield. So I don't want to make Superior artificially a less attractive place for people to invest in, because I think we're already getting builders that are investing here in Superior who are eco-friendly. Case in point, we've got the Element Hotel that is a sustainable. I think they're LEED certified in terms of what they're going to be, but they're going to have the bamboo floors and the LED lights. We'll have Thrive Homes recently did the concept plan presentation here. They're an eco-friendly developer. I think the market is kind of dictating who we're attracting, and I would just be very cautious and reluctant to artificially impose additional restrictions that may have unintended consequences, and maybe completely unnecessary, because the market is already demanding that people build to a certain standard, and we're already getting that sort of thing. So I just want us to tread lightly and
Do you
make
mean
sure that we're not
by-
scaring people
by not
away.
putting a code in, updating codes, or by doing a voluntary program?
Both. I mean, I think that the general town board goals can be sufficient. I would just be careful in adopting any sort of checklist, whether it's in the voluntary standards or in an amendment to the building codes to go up to this higher standard, unless there's a really good reason for us to do so. I just my initial kind of inclination on this sort of thing is to not stir the pot too much, and let's see who we can attract to invest here without imposing additional restrictions. But I'm open to it. And you know, in terms of the staff resources question, I'm with Kevin. You know, if we're gonna spend some additional resources, traffic and safety, I think, is a higher priority for me than you know, policing sustainability practices.
Okay. All right. I want to start by saying thanks to you and the other members for kind of taking the initiative to go above and beyond what the normal call of duty would be for the committee, to kind of think outside the box, to really enhance things for our town and also increase the appeal and attraction for the committee. So thanks for your efforts on that. And to that end, I am also supportive of name change if that is, you know, if that could get in the direction of greater interest and scope of what you do. I would be in support of that. As for the large item pickup, as a consumer, I love things for free. I buy a couch, our Cats Destroy couch, but I cannot wrap my head around having my fellow taxpayers pay to get rid of my now destroyed couch. And so that's where I just get hung up on that large item pickup. Our region has a great amount of resources for hauling things their way or their junk, taking things to Charm that need to be appropriately broken down and recycled. We've got the Hazardous Waste Center in Boulder that takes all the hazardous stuff that Charm won't take. So it's really quite to me, it's more of an education thing. And we've also got the different pickups that we have here once a year, the hazardous waste pickup. So we really have a lot of great options for people to get rid of stuff. I just can't wrap my arms around having taxpayers pay to get rid of basically junk. Junk that we paid money to get into our house. Why are we having our fellow taxpayers pay to get it out of our house? So that's where I get hung up on that. And I mean, just from hearing the other discussion, sounds like we'll have a further discussion on this at the budget meeting. And you know, I'm certainly open to different ideas on that, but I'm probably going to come down on the side of no on the large item pickup for those reasons. Sustainability options for builders, changes to building codes. I definitely want to encourage higher standards, but I probably join in others' concerns about not wanting to do something that's going to be in conflict with current regulations, not be in conflict to be more restrictive than other communities. And so I'm probably going to be in favor of more education and just more encouragement on that. And I agree with Mark that I think the market is really going to, the better builders are trying to lead on this anyway, and I think that's who tends to be attracted to our community to build, and I think we encourage that, and so I think that will, I think we can enhance education on that, but that's where I'm coming in on that. And then in terms of another staff person, I'm probably not in favor of adding another staff person on staff, but what I would encourage the committee to do is really look to Boulder County, to what they might offer to us as a resource. They certainly have probably multiple sustainability people on staff, and as we learned through our discussion with the commissioners recently on an unrelated issue, but they said, hey, we've got wildlife biologists and ecologists and other ISTs that can help you at no cost. And so that, I think we should tap into that, and so maybe we can get more resources, but not have to get it through adding a staff member. So.
Sure, we'd be happy to look into that.
Okay.
And I would just say to the board too that again, our view is that I think I can speak for everyone in RCAC hopefully, but in general, once the downtown area is built up, there's going to be very limited additional commercial building from that point forward. And so our view is essentially that, if we do want to promote additional sustainability beyond just working with great developers that are going to do this type of stuff on their own, at least the updating the IECC code would be a reasonable step to take to make sure that we're promoting sustainability as much as possible while we still can. Because after the downtown goes in, it's not going to matter a whole lot if we update the code or not. And this is a very standard code that's used in jurisdictions across the U.S. So I just want to put that out there, but I do respect all the views, obviously, that you've shared. So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess to summarize, we all seem to come down on the yes side on the name change.
Okay.
The large item pickup was a maybe, if appropriate checks were in play, and that will probably be picked up again at the budget discussion. Sustainability options sounded like we were more in favor of voluntary / let builders kind of lead on that approach or educational approach, and then staff person, not really support for that now.
Okay.
Can I make a clarification on the
Sure.
large item pickup? Correct me if I'm wrong, but RCAC, currently RCAC, is not asking to have it re-implemented at this point. They're not asking for it to be part of the budget
Correct.
process now. All they're asking for is allow them to add it to their current work plan, to discuss it, and see if there's a way that they can implement it. If the town staff comes back to them and says, there's no way we're going to do this for more than $10,000, then it's their job as a committee to figure out a way to make it work for $10,000 or less. They've got to come up with a plan to how are they going to get people to register for it or whatever, get things picked up and make sure that there's little to no abuse. So that's all they're asking, is just to let them start discussing it as part of their work plan for the remainder of this year.
Okay.
No, it's not spending any money.
Okay. And it sounded like there was support for that, and I would be open to discussion. Matt? No.
Go ahead, Matt.
We want to hear from you.
So, as you've mentioned, one of the reasons we discontinued the program was because of the abuse. My concern with is being able to control the abuse, whether you're requiring people to pay or not. Because what we've seen in the past is we have the event, people know that we have the event, so resident or somebody from out of town sometimes, they bring in stuff, drop it off on a street.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows whose it is. We can't identify who dropped it off. And then neighbors start complaining that this needs to be picked up. And so in the end, we end up picking it up. And when people are dropping it off, putting stuff out at night when nobody, that's where the abuse comes in. And so even if you charge residents, I don't think you're able to control that type of abuse.
I think that is a really good point that we should let them discuss and see if there's a way they can overcome that.
Okay.
And if we can't, I mean, if they don't come up with a good solution, it comes to the board's got to approve it. We say, no, it's still going to be abused and we're not going to spend the money. So I'd say at least let them discuss it and maybe they come up with a creative solution.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's very worthy of discussion, because even here, I mean, we could probably talk about it more, but kickoff's in 4 minutes, so hopefully we won't. But, I disagree, right? I mean, I firmly I think that folks are going to abuse the system anyway, and I would rather personally see things discharged of properly and have the community support a discharged recycling large item pickup program than I think what's happening today, which is items are being discharged of improperly. Not everybody is as good as Clint may be with, discharging the couch that the cat's destroyed, right? That's going to be thrown away in some less appropriate manner. So it's certainly worthy of a discussion. I'm pretty sure that's why we have RCAC. I welcome the rigorous debate and then a recommendation given the appropriate budget limitations.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
You have good direction
Yeah,
from us?
so
Okay.
What are the next steps for the name change, at the least? And maybe I'll talk to Martin about that, but sure.
Suggest them.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Brainstorming.
That's an agenda item that's going to take a whole meeting, I would think. Because seriously, I mean, not for us, an RCAC meeting.
No, we're actually planning on bringing it up on
We're going to have a
Thursday,
naming
so.
contest. It's kind of like the
Exactly.
Wildflower Park. We'll
No, I think
submit
it's-
have kids submit names.
Super awesome advisory committee.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah,
And
bring
actually,
it back to us. And
Mike Hinchin is here as well. He's put together a whole proposal for the name change, and the plan is to review that on Thursday. I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything else about that, but
feel free to come up. Feel free to come up. I was going to ask for public comment, and since you're it.
Yeah, I'm Mike
Feel free.
Henshin, our CAC committee member. Yeah, well, it sounds like we have clear direction to discuss at our meeting and come back with a formal proposal and draft resolution next in the future for you guys. But we do, we do want to change it. We want to get the name sustainability in there. Call it the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, something along those lines, and tap into that broader definition of sustainability, which maybe you guys already talked about and I missed, but which includes, energy, water, waste, climate change mitigation, the whole gamut. So that's what we are excited to do, and I think we'll bring back the full proposal for you next time.
Great. Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it. All right, anything further?
Yeah, actually, since we're on RCAC, I'm actually going to miss the meeting on Thursday. It's this Thursday.
mm-hmm.
Any board members want to attend the meeting in my place?
It might be a light meeting too, so I'm not sure if I'll be there necessarily.
So yeah, I'm going to miss it. I've got a standing appointment out of town. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. We'll circulate a message and see if anybody can pick that up.
Excellent, thanks.
Okay.
Great.
All right, anything further? Okay,
Thanks so much.
then we are adjourned. An hour early.
see what we can accomplish.